Industrial progress and decarbonization are really two sides of the same coin. Industry is moving towards electric and digital processes. Further industrial progress at this point requires decarbonization. Interestingly, decarbonization of the global economy also inherently requires that we modernize and rethink our industrial systems. These are three key investing themes that Voyager is focusing on. They're really one integrated strategy that economies are pursuing. Electrify the economy, improve and advance manufacturing, and control the critical resources that make it all possible. Economies are doing this to stay competitive. They have to do it. We are seeing the rapid rise of electrification technologies that are very quickly displacing the analog, relatively crude fossil fuel-based technologies that came before them. As Nat has given you some examples, we're going to dive into more detail. Now, these electrification technologies are the result primarily of three forces that are interacting with each other: advances in machine learning and machine intelligence, electrification, and automation. These forces really do interact with and enable each other. Think about a machine that becomes newly electrified, replacing a fossil fuel-driven machine. Now that's electrified, it's digital. It can be controlled with software, with artificial intelligence software that then also learns and continuously optimizes the performance of the underlying device. What this creates is a very powerful flywheel. And that's a flywheel that's driving continuously and ever faster improvements in performance and driving the economy overall, not just at the device level, but the economy level, towards more electrification. What we're seeing across the economy really is that production of products and of energy and consumption of products and energy are both becoming increasingly electrified. They're becoming more efficient, better performing, and cheaper. And again, this isn't just about individual steps forward. It's about these forces working together, creating a very powerful and self-reinforcing flywheel that is inexorably driving the global economy ever faster towards more electrification. It's simply cheaper, better, and easier to use. What this all means is that we are in a new age. We're really entering a new age of industrial progress and modernization. It's important to note that this isn't just about finished goods electrifying or becoming better. This industrial era and this progress is happening at all stages of production, all stages of the economy. Think about making, say, a battery. We could now imagine a newly electrified process for making lithium or nickel or one of the other key ingredients in a battery, a artificially intelligent software that helps to better design and discover battery materials and design finished batteries. And then that battery being deployed onto an intelligent grid or in an appliance that's now controlled with software and grid connected to be used in a way that creates better performance and more efficiency. What this all means is that the global economic system is moving away from brittle fossil infrastructure and really shifting to something that's flexible, resilient, and responsive, and electrification is the key to all of that. This new industrial era is defined, more than anything else, by decarbonization, by electrification and decarbonization in other ways. Burning fossil fuels is really an analog, crude process. We've been doing it for, a very long time, but in modern industrial terms, about 200 years. In that several centuries of optimization, we really wrung all the progress out of these sort of crude thermal combustion processes that we can. There's really no more room, no more significant headroom for further optimization. Industry is moving towards electric and digital processes that allow for greater efficiency, greater precision, greater control, and cheaper processes. Further industrial progress at this point around the world requires decarbonization. We can't get there without it. We can't get to that higher plateau of more precision and efficiency and lower cost. Interestingly, decarbonization of the global economy also inherently requires that we modernize and rethink our industrial systems. So industrial progress and decarbonization are really two sides of the same coin. So what is happening as we electrify and as we reinvent modern processes? We unlock, as I mentioned, more precise controls. This allows us to do things like make materials that are consistently higher quality, better performing, cheaper, even to make completely novel materials that we couldn't make in any other way. And what we're seeing at Voyager is that founders are exploiting the full toolbox of modern technology to reinvent and redesign industrial production. This is a really exciting time. Founders are using lasers, microwaves, radio frequency, plasma beams, X-rays, and many, many, many more tools as detectors, as power sources, and even as manufacturing technologies in and of themselves. As we look ahead, full industrialization of the global economy will require some additional advancements. These are things we're looking out to. Nat mentioned a few of them. These are further progress in products to generate cheap, reliable industrial heat, low temperature, high temperature, baseload power to create electrical energy, and better ways for creating and using liquid fuels. We are also always on the lookout for advanced materials to improve performance and efficiency in everything from computing to cooling. Voyager has invested already in all of those areas I just mentioned, and you'll hear more about that in specific detail a little bit later on. The new industrial era that we're in is the result of, as we just outlined, forces including automation, machine learning, AI. What those forces are doing is they are creating and shifting the landscape towards electrification, towards modernization. They're creating massive opportunities. Specifically, we're going to focus on opportunities in three key areas. Electrification itself, it's both a force and an opportunity for investing. Advanced manufacturing and critical resources. These are three key investing themes that Voyager is focusing on. It's important to note these aren't three totally separate opportunities. They're really one integrated strategy that economies are pursuing. Electrify the economy, improve and advance manufacturing, and control the critical resources that make it all possible. And economies are doing this to stay competitive. They have to do it. They need to do it. It's not a matter of compliance or ESG, which is actually a good thing for pointing towards the driving forces here being broad and deep and inexorable. What we see is that economies will need to fully control their destiny in these three key areas in order to compete on a global stage. For example, in order to be a global player in the AI race, countries will need to have access to the advanced manufacturing capabilities to make chips, access to the critical resources, everything from critical metals to transformers that go into making data centers, and the ability to generate vast amounts of reliable electrical power to power those data centers. So again, electrification, critical resources, advanced manufacturing. We look for technology that's inevitable, but not obvious. We look for startups that can become the next trillion-dollar company due to their critical importance to the ongoing competitiveness of businesses and countries. So the first theme that we're going to dive into in detail is electrification. As you heard about in Nat's talk, many more aspects of the economy are electrifying. This is happening because electrification and the use of electricity is simply cheaper than using fossil fuels. Your fuel is cheaper, your parts are cheaper, your operation and maintenance is cheaper. Specifically, this acceleration in the last several years in end-use electrification has happened for a few reasons, but one of them is cheaper and better appliances, heat pumps, batteries, and other products and critical technologies. That cost reduction and performance improvement has really been caused by improvements in manufacturing, in materials, and in supply chains. The world started to electrify about 150 years ago with the first electrical power plant starting with end uses in lighting and some kinds of machinery. About 20%, 22% if you're China, 30% of the end use of energy in economic activity is already electric. Much of the rest of end energy use is rapidly electrifying. This is a massive opportunity. Specifically, what does that look like? In mobility, we're seeing gas cars around the world being rapidly replaced with cheaper, more efficient EVs, e-scooters, even e-bikes. In buildings, heating is moving from gas and oil furnaces to heat pumps, electric induction stoves, electric water heaters, among other devices. In industry, industrial process heat is shifting from gas to cheaper electric alternatives. What this means is that load growth is growing up. Demand for electrical power is increasing. That's just simply being driven by electricity being easier to use, easier to deploy, easier to build and operate with, and cheaper. Inherently, electric devices are simple relative to gas and oil, other combustion-driven devices. Those have very high thermal losses. You lose a lot of the energy you put into the system not doing any useful work. Engines, combustion-based engines are complex. They have many more moving parts, and they're more difficult and more expensive to build, to maintain, and to operate. When we look across the economy at the infrastructure layer, fossil fuel-based infrastructure is increasingly too brittle and too expensive relative to renewable and electrified options. To give one example, in most parts of the world, it is cheaper to build new utility-scale solar generation than to operate an existing coal plant. The shift to an electrified economy presents both massive challenges, yes, but also incredibly huge opportunity for startups to dominate trillion-dollar global markets by making products that are simply better and cheaper. The second theme we're going to talk about that guides our investing is advanced manufacturing. Countries that want to control their destiny need to control their access to the most critical products. Increasingly, that also means the advanced manufacturing tools and technologies and capabilities needed to make critical products. Advanced manufacturing is critical to growth and security. When we talk about what kinds of products are critical to growth and security, these are things like turbines, batteries, motors, chips, and other means of generating energy, materials, and compute. So access to advanced manufacturing, we've seen this being used recently as a geopolitical weapon. China has a near monopoly, functionally a monopoly, on making rare earth elements. These are critical metals that go into the highest performing motors found everywhere from your car to a jet airplane. And China functionally banned the export of rare earth elements this past April as a sort of geopolitical tool to pressure the U.S. In international negotiations. What that meant is that once rare earth element exports stopped from really the only source that made them, countries in the West, particularly companies in the West, particularly the U.S., really suffered, and they had to pause manufacturing. In some cases, companies like Ford and GM had to actually idle their factories because they couldn't get critical parts. Now, the U.S. has also used access to advanced manufacturing as a geopolitical tool. This is not a one-way ticket here. NVIDIA is a company that's U.S.-based, makes the most, I'm sure we're all familiar with NVIDIA these days, makes some of the most advanced chips in the world, specifically most advanced chips used to power AI applications. And the U.S. government, wanting to slow down China's progress in AI, has tried to ban or restrict China's access to NVIDIA's most advanced and relevant chips. So what can we learn from these examples? Well, probably a lot of lessons to take away, but one that we really focus on here in investing is that advanced manufacturing is now a requirement for companies to compete on a global stage, economically, politically, and militarily. Increasingly, the most sophisticated advanced manufacturing processes require AI. AI is not just about chatbots. This is really a competitive advantage in manufacturing that unlocks greater precision, greater efficiency, faster iteration, and cheaper production, because AI can learn and continuously improve and solve sort of multifactorial problems in a way that you can't do otherwise. This is a comprehensive movement that we're seeing spanning all stages of production, from making fundamental materials like metals to operating the machines, the equipment, and entire networks of machines, equipment, and data streams to run entire factories, to even operating the finished goods that come out of those factories, like drones, EVs that are now grid connected, data centers, and more. Leveraging AI is now a requirement for economic and military competitiveness. The industrial arms race will be won on the factory floor. So the last investing theme we're going to talk about is critical resources. Countries need to control the critical resources that drive growth. And they need to do this to ensure that their economies will continue to thrive and that they have military security, since the military also runs on these critical resources. Resource ownership is now a national strategy. And the new national assets are compute, energy tech, and critical minerals. By energy tech, we mean things like batteries, motors, transformers, generators, turbines, critical equipment to generate and use energy. By critical minerals, we mean materials like lithium, nickel, rare earth metals. These are critical ingredients that go into making batteries and motors and other critical goods. And these are very, very big markets. Just in looking at AI alone, there'll be a projected $7 trillion of investment into U.S. data centers alone by 2030. These are massive market opportunities. What we're seeing is that economic security and national security are inseparable, and increasingly they rely on compute, energy tech, and critical minerals.